Welcome to In the Know. We are back recording again. Today we're going to be talking about the schedule, the in-season cup, Zion, Trey Murphy, and more. Check it
The New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson.
And Holiday, the dribble penetration, so tough going to the goal. High above the rim to rip it down.
What's up, fellas? Welcome back. How has your last couple of weeks been?
Been cooling, just trying to stay cool in this New Orleans heat. My God,
It's
The only
been
one time of year where I can gloat about the weather.
oh man,
Yeah, wait,
one
what's it like
time.
in Michigan?
yeah,
It's 70s right now. It's nice.
I envy you so much. It
Yeah,
doesn't
like
reach
the
the
AC.
70 at all.
I would say the
My
AC
parents are-
struggles to stay in the 70s here.
my
That's how
my
bad
parents
it
are here
is.
visiting, and they're outside hanging out with my wife and daughter, and I think they're enjoying the. It was supposed to be rain in the forecast the entire weekend here, and it's cleared up and been like beautiful, and so it's been
Why are you
pretty
talking
good,
to
and-
us? Why are you talking to us and not throwing a barbecue at 70 something degrees?
throw it up barbecue. Yeah, right. I should be.
It's a shame.
Just so hyped
No.
about the schedule, man.
Oh. Yep. So the Pelicans schedule came out. We'll get into that. I think the first thing I would like to get into, Zion Williamson is hosting a camp back in his hometown, Spartanburg, South Carolina, and there's been a lot of pictures to come out of that, a couple of videos, and most noticeably, what people have been talking about is he looks like he's in really good shape. I guess first of all, Jeremy, when you see these pictures, what are your thoughts? And are you buying it?
My thoughts are, brother, you need to follow what Zion's doing. That's my first thought. Secondly, I mean, he buying it. I mean, I'm not going as far as the Ben Simmons taking threes in the summertime jokes, but I mean, he looks great. Like you can't deny that at all. The biggest thing is October, November, December, keeping the weight off. More importantly, but right now, I mean, I'm happy for the brother.
Yep. I mean, I think when you go down and you finish the season the way he did with a leg injury, you're nervous, right? Like for anyone, forget Zion, but anyone who carries the kind of weight that he does, if you have an injury going into the off season, taking that injury with you into the off season, then you don't know. And even just seeing some of these pictures come out and looks like he's been busting his ass, and so to get ready for the season. So it is great to see. I think just because of where he ended the season to where he is now.
So, first of all, I want to say we've seen the pictures before. We've had moments on social media where everyone's gone crazy with the pictures, and
Yep.
I'm honestly at the point where it's like, look, I'm happy for him in that it looks like things are working out, and I've heard nothing but good things about him for a while now. This is like the longest, it's dating back to January or so. It's been a consistent messaging from people around the team where it's like, no, he's taking stuff seriously, and this is what he wants to do, and he's been trending in the right direction, and he's changed a lot of things. So I love that. I love that we're supposedly seeing the fruits of that labor. What I'm most interested in is, what is it, October 25th or 28th, whatever that first date is. We'll get to it on the schedule. That first date, how does he look like then? And what I'm most interested in after that is, if and when an injury occurs, how long does it take for you to get back on the court? Because those are, to me, the true measures of a change in lifestyle or change in approach. And last season, he played 70 games, which I think is a feat in and of itself, and a little bit indicative of the work he's put in. But we didn't have that chance to see him bounce back from injury because that hamstring strain came at the end of the season, and so there just wasn't enough runway left. But look, I heard, not I heard. Sorry, there was a tweet from one of the people at the camp, and they were quoting his stepdad saying that he's around 281 pounds right now, and he was listed at 285 at Duke, and their goal is to be at 272 when the season starts. This was a tweet. I can pull it up and post it later. But when you hear those numbers, Jeremy, I see you reacting. What's going on? Like, what are you thinking?
That's crazy that he can be the size of a defensive end and do the things he does. Just those numbers are insane. He's going to get down to 272 and he looks like a Greek god and he looks like he can help out on the Saints defensive line because Lord knows they need it. But
don't say that, man. They're gonna do it. Do that shit.
That's messed up.
Earn that $200 million contract I gave you.
You know, what's interesting, speaking of that contract, is the clauses in the contract that stipulate his combination of body fat percentage and weight need to be under 295. I got to double check if it's 290 or 295. I'm like 95% sure it's 295. The combination of that. So if he is trying to get down to 272, that gives him an opportunity to be 23% body fat and still meet the criteria that this contract lays out for him. Now, 23% body fat is really healthy for most people. For athletes, most athletes are under 15, and a lot of pro athletes are under 10. And so I'm not saying that that's what he'll be. If he is at 272, he might still be like an 8% body fat. He still might be under 10. I'm just saying he has a lot of wiggle room and breathing room to meet the criteria in his contract. Now, what's happened is 272. He's certainly played his career at numbers much higher than that. I'm not going to get into the speculation around like what those numbers were, but like in the Stan Van Gundy year specifically, I know for a fact the number was much higher, and he was a 27 point per game scorer, 65% true shooting, just a one man force.
Not to cut you off, that's why like the numbers are not mind blowing or whatnot. If he plays the games, no one truly is going to care. We've seen Jokic, we've seen Kevin Love, we've seen Marc Gasol. They've played at heavier weights. Karl-Anthony Towns does it.
Luka.
You know what I'm saying? There are athletes who, as long as you're playing, no one really cares about how much you weigh. It's just a crutch. It's just something to talk down on someone once they don't play or they don't play up to quote unquote expectations.
Yeah. So I'm excited for him. 272 is, I've heard that number is roughly around where he was at in the 2019 preseason training camp. When they had pictures of him at all those college football games around Louisiana. And then he had that crazy preseason he was having before that meniscus tear.
Yep.
And what stands out to me was, as a 19-year-old, he was going at Rudy Gobert in the preseason in a way that like
no one had done before.
It was
Especially at 19.
unbelievable. Right. And so 272, he looked really, really good then. So I'm rooting for him to hit that number if that's his goal, or whatever his goal is. I don't think people should obsess with specific numbers there. Obviously his contract needs him to focus on some aspect of the numbers, but it's more of, like you said, can you stay on the court? Can you produce at a high level? Does your body feel good? And does it support you? Does it not fail you when you're trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve? But man, like Mason, do you think if he hits that 272 number, there's a productivity threshold that we're going to see him cross that we haven't seen from him before?
I don't. That's a really hard question to answer. I hope so. But there's also, is there a point where you're worried about the style that he plays, almost being like him cutting too much weight and being less of a force? Or I don't really see it that way. I also I'm thinking about like what position, how are they going to use him? If, given what we talked about last episode, we don't really have a center beyond Tice.
That was the second thing I thought.
Yeah, so like there's at least in the near term, there's a benefit to him being having a little more mass. But I think big picture, I think yes, there should be another level of productivity unlocked for him when he's playing leaner and still can be his explosive self. But I mean, I think there could be some downside to it too.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there's also a world where if he's 272 and his muscle mass is just higher, he's still going to have the same or more force output if he's just stronger at a lower weight. You know, I think you can be bigger and not as strong. You can be smaller and stronger. I think there's ways, and I think at 272 he'd still be like the eighth most massive player in the league, which
That's a
is
fair
kind
point.
of
Yeah.
And
kind
I
of wild.
remember Charles Barkley talking about when he was explaining how Zion should lose weight, but you don't want to go to a number that's too small where you're uncomfortable. He said he got down to like 250, 245. He said, I didn't feel like myself. I felt weaker. So he got his weight back up after he cut it so far. So the number is just a number. Just make yourself as healthy as possible to take on whatever punishment you want to take on and stay on the court.
Yeah, and the other thing about him, like being maybe too small for the center position. Look, I don't think it's a winning prospect for him to play center defensively anyway. So it's just like, yeah, dropping down from 280 to 270 might make you 2% worse on playing the center position defensively, but it
Yeah.
goes from like maybe a D minus to an F or an F to like F minus. Like
Yeah.
it's not a winning proposition anyway. Like I like, like the advantage of it playing center is purely on offense. It's not for defensive purposes.
Yeah, and we can get into it maybe later on in the summer, but I have my questions of a guy with a 6'10" wingspan playing the five.
He's We can get into it, but he's more of a point guard than he's a center,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Let's transition on to the schedule. The schedule released earlier this past week, and obviously there's a lot around the schedule releases. The social media teams have done a good job of putting out these little teaser videos. I like how that's become a trend across multiple sports now, like getting people excited. I did think my favorite one that I saw was the Atlanta Hawks one. I don't know if you guys saw
The
it, but
balloon
that one,
popping.
the balloon popping, that one was really good. But schedule's out. Pelicans are going to play 82 games. Surprise, surprise. Only 80 on the docket right now because of the in-season cup, which the groups for the in-season cup are announced a little bit before. And the Pelicans, now that we've had the dates and locations firmed up, the Pelicans are going to start out by playing the Nuggets at home, and then the Mavericks on the road, and then the Warriors at home, and then the Grizzlies on the road. That is an incredible group to be a part of. We'll touch on the in-season stuff here in a little bit, but overall, first impressions of the schedule, any key takeaways? Yeah, Jeremy, where are you at with that?
First 11 games, they got to go off on a fast start. Like they playing 2 at Portland. They play, but multiple, baseball sets, 2 at Portland, 2 at Golden State, and then you get a bunch of Eastern Conference teams that ends home at Brooklyn. Like it's a great time to get a fast start, to get some momentum with these lineup situations that you're going to have. But feel positive about yourself and rack up some quick wins.
Yeah, Mason, what about you? What have you gathered from looking at the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I was hitting on before we started, but just looking at some of the rest advantages, disadvantages was pretty crazy to see the Pelicans at the very end of both of those. And so the Pelicans have four rest advantage games all season against their opponents, and what sounds bad until you see that they only have 6 rest disadvantages, and are both not just like by 1, but by 2. They're the least in the league. Every other team is between 8 and 13 rest disadvantages, and then every other team is between 6 and 15 advantages. But very weird quirk for the Pelicans to not have any, there to be so much balance there, I guess, in their schedule. The other thing I would look at the opposite end of the schedule. I noticed, I think Will Guillory tweeted out that the Pelicans' final 5 games of the season, which looked very weird to me. It's because it's a lot of Eastern Conference, and so I think the Western Conference every year is a bloodbath, right? It sometimes comes down to tiebreakers, and so I think it's notable that the Pelicans tiebreaker situation with a lot of teams could already be decided with a couple weeks left in the season. And so the fact that they close out with Orlando, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Miami, and then OKC, wishful thinking to think that the Pelicans will be in a tiebreaker battle with OKC, I guess could happen. But I mean, even the 2 games before that are Clippers and Lakers. I think, you'd hope that they're squarely above those 2 teams based on, what we've seen in the offseason. But even before that, at the end of March, it's Charlotte. And so and then Golden State before that, and then Philadelphia and Detroit. So like they have a lot of Eastern Conference games to end the season. And so I do think, again, that is pretty interesting as far as any sort of tiebreaker implications, and the fact that the Pelicans, even the Western Conference schedule, they'll be locked in for a lot of that. And so they got to take care of business against the teams that that they're going to be fighting against before earlier in the season.
So just touching on the advantages and disadvantages part, do you guys think there's going to be a significant difference just kind of being at an even rest situation with most teams? Because just having the fewest amounts of disadvantages and the fewest amounts of advantages, do you feel like it's just like, cool, every single game you're going basically net even in terms of rest, and it's not going to be a quote unquote schedule loss for the most part?
No excuses. That's what I've heard. What I heard when I heard the numbers that Mason said, like they're gonna be playing on the same amount of rest, same practice time as you are. Just go there and hoop.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about I don't know if it was like a rest disadvantage or advantage thing, but that's the 2 games that they played against Dallas, where there was a ton of rest one game, and they lost the game they were supposed to win, and they won the game they were supposed to lose. And like that was a very, very weird situation. Like they lost against the Luka-less Mavs, and then they had the plane or the travel issue where they got in super late.
Yes.
And they won that game.
Hawks career game. Hawks career game.
Very, very screwy, but I agree. No excuses. It should be, I'm sure there's 1 or 2 games. I haven't looked at what those advantages, disadvantages are. It's hard to do that without scrutinizing a lot of details, but I'm sure there'll be 1 or 2 we're pissed about. But yeah, that's going to be a lot of just no excuses. Go hoop. I like it.
The fans are already talking about that. They have 2 days off before they go to Miami for New Year's Day.
So that's really an advantage. Yeah, after a huge homestand.
Good luck.
After a huge homestand.
Christmas homestand, yeah.
Good luck with that one. Look, I think some of this stuff is interesting. You're never going to be able to predict what kind of travel issues you might have over the course of a season, but some of these games where you just know, like, all right, they're going to rest all their starters. You might see less of that this season, and one thing the NBA has done is apparently around marquee matchups on national TV. What they've done is there's no back-to-backs, like sandwiching one of those games, prior to or afterwards. And I think, in my opinion, what that's done is slightly bias the schedule towards some of these teams that are going to appear on national TV a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Celtics, the Lakers, the Warriors. You go down the list of the teams with the fewest back-to-backs, and lo and behold, like, there they are. But back-to-backs in general did go up this season. The Pelicans at 16, which is I think they were at 13 last year. And in general, that they've gone up. I'm curious how they've combated the back-to-backs going up. I wonder if it's more of an intentional, okay, they're going up, but there's less travel. There's more home and homes, or there's more away and away. Like, we were doing these baseball series that you talked about earlier in the pod. It's like, cool, you're doing back-to-back. It's 2 nights in the same city. Or, we're not doing the time zone travel back-to-back. With that one, that one's always the killer, going eastwards from Pacific to Mountain, or Mountain to Central. One of those, like those are terrible. But yeah, like, do you feel like in general with the back-to-backs going up, do you feel like the league has found a way to mitigate some of the injury risk, or they just maybe they just didn't consider it more carefully this year as they've done in the past?
How much worse is it this year than last year? I didn't look as far as the average back-to-backs. Is up like half a game, game?
I think they were. Oh man, I feel like I'm making this percentage up, but I felt like I read somewhere it was like they're up 23% or something like. I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's a lot. I don't know. That's. I mean, I think the mitigating with travel has to happen if you're going to do that, but it does feel like a lot. And so I don't know. Maybe I don't know how 1 year of additional data suddenly magically changes the perception on back-to-back. So it's hard to rationalize that.
But like, I'm looking at the Pelican schedule. They have a back-to-back, both of them in San Francisco. Then the next one is a home back-to-back, and then they have another home back-to-back, Nuggets, Lakers, and then they get 2 days off, and it's at Dallas, at Cleveland, but both in the Central time zone. So, like you said, it seems to be they're focusing on not the wear and tear of hopping time zones, but you can play, and then your opponent may be playing the back-to-back with you.
Yeah. So the other aspect of the schedule that sometimes ends up being important is who they play 3 times versus 4 times in the West. And, per the Pelicans' own release, they are scheduled to play the following teams 3 times: the Clippers, the Lakers, the Timberwolves, the Suns, the Kings, and Utah. So I would say that is every team out of there is a playoff hopeful except for Utah at this moment. They can decide to change their minds. We're waiting on them. Encourage them to change their mind. But
The fans
outside
deserve a competitive team. The fans deserve a competitive team in Utah.
and yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Ryan Smith, if you're listening to this podcast, you want liked in your city, man. Just trade for good players. Uh, but kind of going back to the splits of where these games are happening. Just bear with me for a second. So they're going to play the Clippers twice at home, once away. They're going to play the Lakers once at home, twice away. They're going to play the Timberwolves once at home, twice away, and they're going to play the Sun once at home, twice away, and they're going to play the Kings twice at home, once away, and then they're going to play the Jazz twice at home, once away. So my general philosophy in this is you want to play the good teams more at home and the bad teams more away. But I do like the fact that they have all of these like playoff contenders that they're only facing 3 times. That means hopefully they're playing some of the worst teams 4 times, like Portland. But the two series that I'm really keying in on are the Minnesota and the Phoenix series, and both of these they only have one home game and they have 2 road games. Which of these 2 series do you feel like is going to be like more critical for them going down the stretch, or just in general? Like, are these series more important than some of these other series? Because I personally think they are, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But how do you guys feel about the Minnesota versus the Sun series?
Well, they're both important because they're playoff teams, and you're not going to have a third, fourth down the line tiebreaker. You're going to know if you have a schedule advantage, a standings advantage, because you want to play them 3 times. They fare better against Minnesota, or a Rudy Gobert team. It seems like more than the Booker having 50 on the scoreboard in 3 quarters before they even tip off. So I would have them take advantage of the Timberwolves more than the Suns.
Is it too late to petition the league to get all 3 games against Sacramento on the road and just get more games at home versus Phoenix and Minnesota?
So funny thing about the 3 Sacramento games is they happen within 1 week of each other. They happen right after the trade deadline. So the Pelicans will play them twice in their own building in the Smoothie King Center, and then they'll go play. I want to say it's OKC. Yeah, they'll go to OKC, and then they'll finish out playing Sacramento again. 3 games in the span of like 10 days.
I got the schedule up. It's February 8th at Sacramento, 10th at OKC, then 12th, 13th in New Orleans versus Sacramento. Yeah. That's crazy.
I am happy that Utah is 2 at home, 1 away, because we don't do well there. I mean, we haven't had a great success against Utah in the first place, but especially in altitude over there, it just has not gone well for us. So I do think that's kind of a sneaky nice one to have.
And shout out to the account Noda Analytics. He pointed out that the Pelicans fare poorly pre-Christmas Day versus Utah, and then post-Christmas Day they normally beat them. They're like undefeated in the last couple of years. That's just weird.
That could be because Utah mails it in.
That's what I'm going to say is like one thing is like pretty interesting, and something I care about personally is playing bad teams later on in the season. I would much rather, like the Pelicans have a really good strength of schedule than their first 10, as Jeremy pointed out earlier. But some of these young teams in the early going are way more feisty than they end up being. So an example, Detroit started out 2-0. Detroit started out 2-0, and then they lost 75 straight, or whatever.
75 is crazy.
But so the Pelicans played Portland twice, really early, and on the road as well. And you know what? I enjoy playing bad teams on the road. You want to play the good teams at home. I'm a big proponent of that. But they don't have their spirit broken yet. I really need that losing to set in. I want to see them in April where it's like, you know what? DeAndre Ayton is like, I didn't get traded in February, so I'm gonna shoot 35 shots a game and not rebound. They can't do anything about it, like
They got Detroit
that's when I want to see
twice
these
in late
teams.
March, so you at least got that. I don't think the early season schedule is a little easy. I think the end of the season, I don't think they did too poorly there either. Looking like I'm not bullish on the Clippers this year, just given
Same.
they play the Clippers. So looking at kind of like if you look at March and April, which March is probably a little early pushing it, but they've got the Rockets twice. They've got Utah. You've got Rockets twice in March. They got Utah once in March. Clippers once in March. Spurs, Detroit twice, and then April. April also doesn't look. They got the Clippers again, and then now the rest of that kind of sucks. So never mind.
No, at Brooklyn, I don't think Brooklyn is.
Oh, sorry, Brooklyn. Yeah, Brooklyn.
Cam Thomas 40
yeah,
field goal attempts is going to happen.
Yeah. No, so that's fair. But like, I think the rest of the rest of April isn't very beneficial for that. But I do think they got a lot of teams in March that maybe they're starting to think about. But the play-in messes with all this, so who knows?
Well, I kind of like the aspect you mentioned about playing the East in the March is like if there's more stratification in the East and like these top seeds just have their like seeds locked, then they're more inclined to rest or like they take it easy. Whereas in the West, like if every game matters, like down the stretch, it's like you're gonna see the best version of that team.
We have to avoid 7th place, and all of a sudden it's in April. We have to avoid 7th place by all costs. So we're playing 43 minutes of Kawhi and Harden, and then you deal with the rest.
Yeah. So I looked at since you said that, I was looking at since we know that most Pelicans games there's no advantage or disadvantage, the back-to-back against the Bucks, who are they playing before? Because they're going to play playing too, and they are. But it's against Minnesota, so they're home and home. And it's another Western Conference team, so they could just as easily punt that game and play us. So it's not like they're playing the Eastern.
Is that one a national TV? No, I don't know. I mean, that might be a national TV game.
It is not.
It is not.
It might get flexed though.
It could.
No, it is not. It is not. Let's leave it that way. Giannis, just take the day off.
No.
Well, I'm talking about
the Minnesota
game.
Could game.
Oh,
yeah, Minnesota. It's a Tuesday night. Could get flexed to TNT, right? No, they do Thursdays. I don't know, but. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
NBA TV flex probably.
Either way, it's. I think I like the idea of playing some of these stronger East teams at the end, in general. But let's talk about the in-season cup for a second. So their schedule, we talked about it earlier. Their first game of the in-season cup, November 15th, versus the Nuggets. Let's start there, Jeremy. Or maybe
you mentioned the Nuggets. Yeah. Well, no, you mentioned the Nuggets, and the one thing I wanted to bring up before we go to this is: did you see the Nuggets have based on last season's record? So big caveat there. The Nuggets have the easiest strength of schedule in basketball.
I saw that.
That's saw crazy,
that.
Right?
I don't understand how that's possible.
How is it not an Eastern Conference team?
Yeah,
and they play with like Minnesota and Phoenix. They play in a stacked division. Like, how is that?
I guess either. Portland and Utah are division. So those two teams didn't have a good winning record, and they'll play them 8 times. So that's easier than any other Western division, right?
Yeah, but then like I guess the weird thing is like this that no one else in their division. Utah's the next closest.
And then the Southwest has 4
Utah can't play itself.
9.
Yeah, right. So very, very strange. Anyway, we can go off. I saw that. I was like, that's great. Like, because the next 5 easiest strength of schedules are all Eastern Conference teams. So very weird.
Yeah. So let's talk about Denver. We see them before Thanksgiving, and the Pelicans at this point will probably have. I didn't look at how many games, but I'll probably have played like 12 games by now or something.
Yeah, that is the 13th game of the season.
Oh, whoa, let's go. Great estimation. But yeah, if they play 12 games, they're probably maybe settling into the first set of rotations that they want to try out for the season. And the Nuggets are probably doing the same. They have a lot of interesting issues on their team. And I would call them issues, contrary to what some other Nuggets fans might feel about that situation.
I saw
the number one issue, obviously, is the fact they lost KCP, and they're like, cool. Well, Christian Brown's going to replace him. That's cool. Who's replacing Christian Brown's minutes on the bench? So it's that trickle down effect where things get complicated. The number 2 and 3 issues, in my opinion, are the fact that what's happening in the non-Jokic minutes, and then the third issue is, can MPJ and Jamal Murray be as the max players that they were signed to be? So, Jeremy, I'm going to go to you. How do you feel about that matchup and the fact that the Pelicans are going to see them relatively early in the season, and it's not at altitude?
Well, first thing is, Jokic has 10 triple doubles against the Pelicans, so I'm gonna sign him up for number 11 immediately, and then just hope and pray that those max players you talk about don't play well. Also, it's 2 years now, but Bruce Brown used to give Zion some fits, and he's not on the team. I don't think they have. Aaron Gordon isn't a Zion stopper in that way, so I think they match up well. But again, if I were the Nuggets, I wouldn't worry about it because of number 15. That guy, he's really, really good.
I'm wondering what they're going to do against Jokic, because I think that's because I'm thinking back to last season when I was at the game. Remember this? Pelicans played the Rockets around between Christmas and New Year's, and they had no big. They had one big, I think, and no Zeller was out, and then Jonas was out, and Şengün destroyed them. And so I think that for everything we'll say about you don't need a conventional big to protect the rim or any of that stuff. There are teams you need bodies to throw at someone like Jokic, and so I think even depending on we talked last episode about if the Pelicans aren't going to make a move with BI and they're just going to kind of go in and say, all right, Tice it is, what they're going to do starting wise, they're just going to start small. But I don't think that's viable against the Nuggets. I do think they need a big guy to at least match up some of his minutes. I'm not saying you need to play Tice 35 minutes. You do not. But I think you can't let him get going and just kind of have someone smaller on him and think you can get away with it. And so that's what I'm curious to see is how are they going to change their starting lineup to match up with Jokic, or what are they going to do there?
So my position on this is for the last pretty much for Zion's whole career, they've had a big-bodied center that they were comfortable throwing at Jokic in single coverage, whether it was Derek Favors or Steven Adams or JV or even Billy Hernangomez. Those guys, they were comfortable. You know what? Our strategy is Jokic is going to go off. We're going to try to contain everybody else. And Jokic indeed went off every single game. And, the Pelicans did win a couple. They've been able to win some of those games. And other games they've made competitive. They've come down in the stretch. And what's happened is the Pelicans have not had enough offense. So one thing I'd be really looking at is, do you still see the one-on-one matchup with Jokic? And I would. I frankly would. It's why bother doubling? You don't. Sure, he's gonna chew up Daniel Tice. Yeah, we get it. But he's done that. And so if you can mute everyone else, can you make him gassed on the other end? Can you ramp up the pace? Can you play fast? Can you really lean into your offense? One thing the Boston Celtics did, knowing that they maybe would have to get through Jokic in the finals, is when not have the best player on the team, is they lean into their shooting. They were like, we're going to be a team that shoots from every single position, and we're going to overcome the talent deficit by just out shooting. And you're just not going to be able to keep up with us. And I don't know if the Pelicans have those level of shooters on their team, but there's ways for them to be really successful offensively in a way that punishes some of the weaknesses the Nuggets have. Jeremy, I wanted to go to you. Do you think the addition of Russell Westbrook is going to change anything for that specific matchup? And just what do you feel about his fit there too?
I think the fit is going to be better than people realize because they do need to go fast, but I think that'll help at home. The fact that they're playing them in New Orleans, I think that cancels out his ability to rile the crowd up and get everyone in more competitive spirit. I think that helps better at home, not on the road.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. So yeah, I'd be curious if
as long as he doesn't try to shoot the Nuggets out of a game. That'll be that'll be the issue with Russell Westbrook.
That's gonna happen a few games.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just gonna be on Malone to bench him. When he needs to be benched. The Jose versus Westbrook matchup is gonna be fun, no matter what. That's certainly gonna be fun. What I'm curious at the Pelicans. What I assume is gonna happen is they're gonna be a small ball team for a lot of times. I'm curious if they do. Like, you know what, we are going with quote unquote Z at the center and maybe out the second half or whatever, and just it's all offense. Like, you guys do what you got to do. You're not going to hang with us from a scoring perspective.
I'd be very nervous about throwing Z at Jokic just from a foul perspective. I think Jokic will grift his way into a couple. I don't want him foul baiting against Zion. Like, I'd rather throw someone else like Herb or Trey Murphy on him and just deal with it. But we'll see what happens.
Brandon
or Bi.
That's your job. That's your job, Bi. You want that contract? That's your job.
He'll be thrilled.
The dirty work. Someone has to do the dirty work.
You got
team captain. You team captain. We need you to take care of this.
Lead by example. All right. Yeah. Next game, November 19th at Dallas. Dallas, very familiar opponent. Obviously, they made the finals. They added Klay Thompson this year. They added Najee Marshall. This is going to be an easy game, but I do think the Pels match up better with Dallas than they match up with the Nuggets. Jeremy, how do you feel about the Dallas matchup here?
Well, two teams that I think are going to win 50 games without blinking. They just got a monster. They're a monster offensively. They got two guys that can get 40 however they want, and they're going to find open shooters. And the addition of Klay, everyone's worried about his defense. If he puts up 15, 17, he ain't got to worry about playing defense on that team. Like, I really like Lively. I was so wrong about him coming out the draft. He knows exactly who he is on both ends of the court. And they have depth. Like, I can only imagine Najee when he plays us, how he's gonna feel seeing those other guys in that jersey. It's gonna be fun.
This is the one where I'm on the exact opposite end of the spectrum as far as Pelicans worrying about playing bigs, and like, I think that I don't know if the matchup against Dallas I love, because they are a really good team, but I am happy to play small and let them go into Daniel Gafford as much as they want. And so I want to see how they react to that. I want to play small against this team as much as possible. And try to pick on guys like Klay defensively. And just look, if they're gonna hit 33s, then what are you gonna do?
Is Klay the one you want to pick on defensively, not Kyrie?
I mean,
Luka. I don't know.
I mean, the entire perimeter, like, that's fair, everyone. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I just think that they going small against Dallas is the best way to go against that team, and hope that they try to do dumb things and not let their best players hoop. So it's gonna be a fun series, I think, with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, like, look, they're gonna probably cede like 37 lobs to Dallas. It's just the nature of how that team is built and how the Pelicans are built. Kind of going in opposite directions there, but
we'll get one or two really sweet blocks from Zion in the process, which will make it worth it.
I hope so.
The key here, so, like, defensively, what I assume the Pelicans will do is they'll probably put like DeJounte on Kyrie, put more size on Kyrie there, and then they'll probably put Herb on Luka. Now, I'm curious though if they try to mix some stuff up and put Herb on one of their centers. So when that pick and roll eventually happens,
they switch it up. Switch it.
And this is where I think the Pelicans are really going to miss Dyson, and they're really going to miss Najee, and they're really going to miss Larry's. And they had, obviously, the offense sucked when multiple of those guys were on the court together. But defensively, man, they were able to do, like, okay, we're going to put one of these guys on Kyrie, one of these guys on Luka, one of these guys going to switch when you pull someone up for the screen.
Yep.
And I'm curious. This is a good game for BI to match up with their bigs, in my opinion. They started to experiment with that last year. With Allen and a couple other matchups. They're slipping my mind, but just BI on Lively. If Lively is going to be a high usage offensive guy, that's probably a win. They're not going to post him up. Same thing with BI on Gafford. They're not going to post him up. So, would I feel comfortable making that defensive switch? I don't know, but I probably feel more comfortable about it than playing drop
Yes. Yes.
against Luca or Kyrie. So offensively, though, to your point, one thing OKC and some other teams that Dallas faced struggled with was pulling these rim protectors out of the paint. Even when OKC had Chet out there, like they couldn't really get lively out the paint, and it became a struggle. And Gafford obviously has given, I don't want to say he's given Zion problems, but he's had very notable emphatic blocks against Z and the Pelicans as a whole. Um, Going small kind of plays to his strengths. Jeremy, what do you feel is a way the Pelicans can open up the paint and get these guys out of there and just kind of prevent them from camping?
Um, gonna have to take and make threes. Like it sounds as simple as that, but maybe use Herb on the short roll and try to use, you put out a great snippet talking about being more advantageous, more adventurous with Herb, and use him better schematically as more of a five, and have their weakest defender, have to measure up against Zion or DeJounte. And you may not open the paint that way, but you get a better matchup, and you can break down the defense. It doesn't matter if a rim protector's there or not. You are a 4-on-3 is what you look for in basketball.
I'm with you. And what's gonna happen, in my opinion, in that matchup is if you're Dallas, the guy that you're gonna put your center on is hurt. Right. And
Yep.
if you space out Herb to the corner, then the Pelicans have to be willing, and Herb has to be willing to take 10 of those corner shots and then hit them at a high rate. But historically, they've neither been willing to commit to that at that level of a volume to kind of pull that guy out of the paint, nor have they converted. Herb's had some great games, and I think he's going to continue to have some great games. And maybe one of these Dallas games, that's what we see. But if you're Dallas, I feel like the calculus is pretty easy. Oh, they're going to kick to Herb every single time. We'll live.
Yep.
We'll live. If that's how you're going to beat us, we'll live. I don't know.
42% 3-point shooter, and I am taking one season sample size and running with that shit. Forget it. Forget those 2 years before that. So yeah,
you can even add the post All-Star break from the 2022-23 season to help with your sample size.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you can look at specifically that right corner. Isn't he like 70% or 62? I don't know. It's just like some absurd
number. Yep. Yep.
That specific corner, and then not the other one. It's pretty interesting. No, look, I think they're a tougher matchup than they were last year. I still would prefer to match up against them than the Nuggets. I think Dallas's strengths are easier for the Pelicans to maybe mitigate than the Nuggets. But let's go on to the next matchup, which is the Warriors, who the Pelicans will play at home. New look Warriors, no Klay Thompson. They brought on God, who was their big addition that I'm blanking on?
Buddy from the 76ers.
And Kyle Anderson.
No, DeAndre Melton. Yeah.
Right. Anderson was the other guy they brought on. So they have some interesting new additions. Buddy Hield. Was the Klay Thompson replacement. Do you guys feel like they are deeper or more well-rounded as a team now with some of these additions?
You go ahead, Mason.
I don't think they're a better team. I think their ceiling is lower, but I do think their floor is potentially higher. And so I don't know. They don't really scare me. I don't feel like anyone, like, you can just focus on Steph, I think, and that's enough versus before. I don't know if that was truly the case. And so, like, Draymond's going to get in your head. He's going to go off with his antics, but we have the Herb Jones neutralizer there. But I don't know. I just I think that unless Steph goes, gets microwave hot on you again, which he does, but I think you can devote more energy towards just doing what you have to do to stop him. And then on the other side of the ball, I think we saw in the Olympics that there is decline happening there. And so between that and the fact that I don't see them as much of a scary offensive team anymore. I don't know. Again, I think, maybe overall they're I don't think they lost ground in the West necessarily, but I don't think the upside, I just don't see it there anymore.
Yeah, like there are like 3 teams in the West where I think clearly can win 50 games, and Golden State is not one of them. Not even close.
Really?
Yeah, the threat of Clay from 25, 30 feet still was there. It doesn't matter how he may have been cold some nights or he didn't play defense. It's still the threat of the Avalanche coming. Still scared teams schematically. And coaches have never trusted Buddy Hield defensively enough to say, okay, you're going to stay on the court if you hit 5, 6, 7 threes, or give you the opportunity to do so. D'Anthony Melton, while I like him, I don't. People are saying their depth and he's part of it is a reason why they may be an improvement. I just don't see it. If Steph doesn't go nuclear, I don't know how they score. I don't know how they score. Continuously on offense. And as much as they like Kuminga, he's if it with our lineup, you can switch almost everything against the Golden State Warriors, and Draymond may find some back cuts because of that motion offense. But other than that, they don't scare me at all. You just, like I said, switch everything, hope Steph doesn't go off, make Kuminga or the other guys beat you.
So they won 46 last year, and Draymond missed 20, 25. I don't know, a good number due to suspension.
Do you think Draymond's going to play 82 games?
No, but is he going to miss? Is he going to miss 25? I don't know. I think they were closer to 50 last year than a lot of people thought, and they probably would have hit 50 if Draymond wasn't Draymond. I do think, as Mason said, the floor is higher. They got more NBA players on their roster now than they had in the past, but they are one of those teams where I don't think they have an answer for Zion. And look, Draymond has guarded Zion one on one well in the past at times, and I think he's been aided and abetted by Willie Green putting Larry out there and some of these other people that the Warriors don't have to guard. But just as a concept where look, one on one, Draymond's had his moments, but I still think Zion's had very productive games against Golden State, especially down the stretch last year on that road trip that they went on. And I think where there's not a lot of length and size, Zion does really, really well. And now, hopefully, with the addition of DeJounte, he's going to be attacking Draymond on the move more so than posting up, where Draymond is very stout and capable of using his hands and smarts in positioning. So I think you're right. The Warriors are going to be a Steph Curry supernova type team where they need that to happen. And if that doesn't happen, what is their identity? Okay. Well, let's go on to the next team, the final team, which is the Grizzlies. And the
The
Pelicans play them.
fighting Zach Edey's. Let's
Fighting
go.
Zach Edey. This is my least favorite matchup. Well, that's not fair. Those other first two teams were really, really tough matchups.
Hey man, they're
But
all tough, man.
I think aesthetically, like this is my least favorite matchup because the games against the Grizzlies are always a rock fight, and it's because Jaren Jackson's gonna sit in the paint the whole time. They're gonna have Marcus Smart doing Marcus Smart things, and Ja Morant's gonna be back. So I don't like the Grizzlies. But Jeremy, you're shaking your head. Talk to me about them. Where are you at with them this year?
Okay, so I'm gonna veer to football for a second and bring it back to the Grizzlies. Okay, my wife would always talk about when they faced the 49ers, when they had those Ahmad Brooks, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman teams, and it's just Justin Smith. They're so big. That's how I feel about the Grizzlies. Sure, they're not gonna play. They're not gonna have great half court offense, and sure, they're not. They're gonna probably go 30% from three. But Desmond Bain is a strong safety, and now they have Marcus Smart, and they just got Edey, who's a mammoth of a man. And as you said, what's my man? Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to camp in the paint. Oh, by the way, Vince Williams is a menace when he comes off the bench, and Gigi, he may go off anytime he wants. They're just such big, sturdy guys, and you only got one big, sturdy guy, and they're going to put him through hell every time he touches the ball. I don't like the matchup at all. I try to act like this is a rivalry. damn, they're built to beat this team so many ways defensively. Just bludgeon them.
Is that how you feel, Mason?
It's I'm not quite as scared, but I'm not. I don't like the matchup at all. That's for sure. I mean, look, and then beyond everything around the challenges with the matchup, even though the Pelicans have had, until last year, they were having weirdly good fortune against Memphis, but I mean, and they have players who are off the bench now. They got meaningful minutes last year because of all the injuries, and now they've got these guys like Vince Williams with more confidence and Gigi Jackson. Like they're deep now. Like they're not just the like John Morant is the captain of the ship, but I mean like they've got talent, they've got depth, and then they've got Zach Edey too now, and so yeah, they can beat you a lot of ways, and at full strength, which has been the challenge lately for Memphis, is being full strength. But when they've got all their guys, like they're a very versatile team. And so I think, Shamit, when you said that they might scare you the most, I think that I might agree with you there. Like it's a very tough matchup.
They're going to have to pressure test Edey. And what I mean by that is they're going to have to go at him at the rim. They're going to have to ramp up the pace and make him run. He's very well conditioned, and I think the Pelicans are going to lose a fair number of battles at the rim too with him. He's just enormous, and having Jaren Jackson out there and having Marcus Smart just roaming around doing those things, it's not going to be fun for everybody. But the only way to deal with those kind of bigs is you have to keep going at them over and over again, because if you let them dictate where you can or can't go, then you've kind of already lost the game. So, and I think that's something Zion hasn't had a problem with. He just, like, we've seen it with Rudy Gobert. We've seen it with all of these rim protectors. Even with Jaren Jackson, Zion doesn't stop. And I think that's one of the best qualities about him. Sometimes it doesn't look pretty, but he just endures. He just keeps going. He's like, all right, cool, you got me there. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And that wears on people. But this is, again, one of those games where the Pelicans are going to have to get the right lineups out there. And the right lineups need to be offensively slanted. I am scared of them putting Zach Edey on Herb Jones and then Jaren Jackson on somebody else. And you're like, cool, Edey's just in the paint the whole time. Or vice versa, Jaren Jackson on Herb Jones, and he's just in the paint the whole time. They're gonna need to hit their threes. They're gonna need the right spacing, and they might be another team where you have to play small, but you have to be so overwhelmingly good small that they don't have a chance to beat you with Edey and their size inside. But one thing I do think the Pelicans are good at, or I guess might have a favorable matchup, is Jeremy. I don't know if I know they're big, but I think the Pelicans at the wing position, at the perimeter positions, might be bigger. I want to push back on your point a little bit, because if you have Brandon Ingram, if you have Trey Murphy, if you have Herb Jones, and even if you have DeJounte Murray, who all of these guys should be able to shoot over pretty much any of their perimeter defenders, if you think about it. And obviously Herb's not really going to be involved offensively, but the more offensively slanted guys should be able to shoot over any of their defenders. This might be a game where the Hezi Midi needs to come out from Brandon. It might need to be a DeJounte Murray. You know what? No screens. Everybody clear out. I'm going to go one-on-one with Ja. Like, it might be that game.
Here's my counter to your counter. It's not that they're just big. They're also crafty, and they know how to get whistles in their favor. Think about the game right after Christmas when we were up 9, and they just worked the refs. Their entire 5 minutes was just working the refs to a point where I think Marcus Smart took out Trey's knee at one of these points, and they called the foul. They called the foul on Trey. Like they know they know how to use their bodies in ways to get the calls in their favor. They had to have a review, so they didn't call a foul, and then they immediately called another foul for Jaren Jackson. Like all the tricks that you want us to develop, they know them.
Would you
go ahead?
I was gonna say, would you play zone or box and one against them?
I may zone them up and see if Ja is going to take step back threes, and if Bane hits you and Ja hits you, and let Mark. One thing about Marcus Smart, he is not scared to shoot the ball. Not going to go in sometimes, but he's not. So maybe your best bet is just a bunch of misses and get out in transition and get them before they get set defensively.
Turn them into a jump shooting team.
Turn
Jared
them to
Jackson's not the most reliable jump shooter.
yep.
Okay. Yeah, look, I don't like that matchup.
It
It's always a fun time
but
with the
hold on.
Grizzlies Twitter. Go.
Think of this group, right? The team we have the most confidence against has a top 15 all-time player. Even if he's on a decline, can still go nuclear for 65 points. Like that's
Yeah.
what we're dealing with this group.
So the other thing I'll have to say is that do you guys have any strong feelings towards them advancing out of the group and making it to Vegas like they did last year? How do you feel? Like, what are your general thoughts on that?
I mean, once you see this group, no. Like if I felt like they had a reason, like if they weren't in the toughest group in the entire league, which I think it's pretty obvious that they are, then it'd be like at this point, I can't bring myself to care about it because that sets you up for disappointment. So I'm just gonna say if they do it, great. And let's focus on what matters. Like what really matters. And look, if the Lakers want to go back-to-back NBA Cup champions, just have at it, man. Have at it.
I will say when the games are played, I'm going to think they could beat all of them by 20. So the competitive nature in me is going to come out.
Oh yeah.
But do I care? I care that they matter in the regular season standings. I really don't care if they make it to Vegas or not. And our boys don't need to be in Vegas. You saw that. They don't need to be in Vegas.
Well, what's fascinating is like advancing out of the group stage allowed them to play Sacramento another time, and so I'm curious. I really am curious how the schedule. I haven't really done any like research
Did you
into it, but how the
see
schedule.
did you see the Sacramento Kings Twitter meme? We have to play New Orleans again, but it's only 3 times this time.
The Kings put that out? Their own account?
Kings,
That's amazing.
Not their account, their fans. It just
Oh.
I got it from all Kings fans that they're just sick and tired of playing the Pelicans.
Yeah, once you lose to us to
curious.
play without Zion there, like that's the whole other level.
Yeah. I wish I could have a crystal ball that would determine the most optimal path for those remaining 2 games that are like unscheduled, like how to get the most favorable conditions for those 2 games. Win the exact right amount of games that will enable that outcome.
I would like Portland twice. Just put Portland on the schedule twice and be done with it.
Yeah. No. I think that was good conversation around the in-season tournament where we're nearing the hour mark for this. So we did want to talk about the Trey Murphy extension situation. Let's briefly touch on it because I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about as we approach camp. Is there a level of concern from you guys that we haven't really heard much about this?
Go ahead, Mason.
Nah, I mean, I don't think so. I see him as a very important staple for the franchise, and I guess I have 0 reservations about the deal getting done. So I mean, no news as long as I'm not hearing anything negative about what's going on. I'm good.
These things happen in October. Either you get their maxes at the beginning of the season, at the beginning of off season, or right as training camp starts. Not hearing anything. They say no negative news is good news on this front. I believe they're going to get it done before the start of the season.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. One thing I've heard consistently from Trey's camp is they feel very good about the whole situation. And I've heard that similarly from the Pelicans. They feel very good about the whole situation. So I don't think it is a cause for alarm because, again, I think I've spoken about this before. A lot of restricted free agent guys, as Jeremy just said, it happens later in the summer. There's plenty of guys in his class that are waiting for their own deals. So Jalen Suggs doesn't have a deal. Jalen Johnson doesn't have a deal. Jalen Green, all the Jalen's, at least Jalen's have a deal.
Shouts out to Jalen Rose, man. You think they all
Yeah.
take his name?
Jalen Kaminga. No, I'm joking. Jonathan Kaminga. Jalen Sengun.
All these Sengun is crazy.
all these dudes don't have a deal yet, and so I don't think it's any kind of cause for alarm. I do think both sides feel very good about the situation. I do think that number is going to be a lot larger than folks
Yeah.
think it might be. Which I say that because I've heard people throw around like 100 million or 120 million, and I don't
Oh,
think
those
it's
people
gonna.
get out of here. They get out of
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I was going to ask because when you hear that both sides are happy with how things are going, that tells me that Trey's camp is actually happy. The Pelicans need to say that they're happy because otherwise
Yes.
it's a bad thing.
It
So,
sounds
Well,
like
well,
he gonna get paid.
to be fair, like I don't think they've had discussions that far yet, but I think there's a general understanding from both sides of like what it would take to get it done. I think just for a variety of reasons, these discussions don't heat up until later, and some of it had to do with the Brandon situation lingering, and it is what it is. But look, I think if I had to bet on it today, um, I think they get the deal done this summer because they will not risk him entering restricted free agency next summer with a team like the Brooklyn Nets, who have historically handed out these ugly, ugly maxes to guys like Tyler Johnson
What
or
do you think
Otto.
Brandon Ingram's waiting for?
But if you're the Brooklyn Nets, you're not going to pay Brandon. I mean, yeah, like, look, that's pretty interesting. Which is why, like, I think Trey and Brandon, to an extent, are mutually exclusive entities on the Pelicans. They don't have room for both of them positionally, but most important, financially. Like if you play out the books and you give both of them the extensions that they are looking for, try to find me room for the rest of the guys on the team because Zion's already on his max and DeJounte's making over $30 million. They're gonna have to attach picks to move CJ at that point. He's at $30 million. So it is, it is what it is. I do we ended up losing Jeremy here for the close, which is unfortunate because we were about to wrap it up anyway. But I do want to close on this note. Mason, do you feel Brandon Ingram is going to get traded before training camp? Not before training camp, sorry, before the first game of the regular season. That's more important.
No, I don't think so. I think
we got Jeremy back, sweet.
Yeah, I think we are going into weirdo hoops mode, and I'm bought into it. I don't, unless you tell me you think that there's additional ulterior motives on some of the other deals, because we've seen Utah making some smaller deals since the Markkanen extension. So unless there's some sort of calculated mechanics that they're trying to pull together for a Brandon Ingram trade, like I just don't see. It just doesn't seem like the market is there, and I don't know. I think we may see a move in season. I think that's fairly likely, but not yet.
Jeremy, the question was, this is the last question. We're signing off after this. Do you believe a Brandon Ingram deal gets done prior to the season starting, prior to game 1 of the regular season?
No, unfortunately. I don't think he has anywhere to go right now. I would like him to go somewhere. That sounds real mean the way I said it, but for the betterment of the team, I would like for this relationship to part ways, but I just don't think he has a place to go. So, like Mason said, sicko basketball. Why not? Let's get it. Let's get it.
Sicko basketball. This has been In the Know. Thanks for listening, folks.